Mike Tyson. Terence Crawford has a master's in mean, but Errol Spence just keeps coming. What's good, everybody? It's your boy, Cardinal Ridge Sports. Let's talk about it. Alright, y'all. So, the OG, former heavyweight champion of the world, Iron Mike Tyson, recently gave an interview and he spoke about the Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. fight, and I wanted to give my deuce, break it down for whoever listening.
I really don't feel nothing about it. You know, I'm a rational person, so maybe I should be the underdog if you tell these people to do all the best and stuff, what I've been through, what the stuff that occurred in the past 2-3 years.
All right, y'all, so Iron Mike, what did he have to say? He said that Terence Crawford has a master's in mean. And what did he mean by that? What did he mean by saying he has a master's degree in being mean?
Call yourself the big fish, we're going to have enough food for everybody.
Well, there were a few things that he referenced in the article I read, and I just want to touch on a few of those. Number one, it seems like a lot of people point to the Shawn Porter fight as one of Terence Crawford's best fights. They asked Errol Spence, and he said Gamboa, but it seems like most people go back to the Shawn Porter fight. And when you ask a lot of people why they feel like Terence Crawford is going to win, they normally reference the Shawn Porter fight. They say he's a naturally bigger fighter, that he's very talented, that he was a slight favorite in that fight. But if you ask me, I feel like Shawn Porter was already semi-retired. I didn't feel like in any way he was going to win that fight. And I don't think that was the best version of any boxer that Terence Crawford has fought.
God damn, I better get some respect from you motherfuckers now.
I actually feel like Spence might be right. Besides Jeff Horn, there are no really great names that you can point to at welterweight that Terence Crawford's beat. But if you go back to the lower weights, he has a lot of great names on his resume. He beat a lot of great fighters in the lower weights. Now, Mike Tyson also said that he feels like Terence Crawford was able to, punish Shawn Porter, for lack of a better word. That he pretty much had his way with Shawn Porter. And he said that he compared the Shawn Porter fight that Terence Crawford had and the Shawn Porter fight that Errol Spence had. And he said that he felt like Terence Crawford did a better job of dispatching of Porter than Errol Spence did. And I would beg to differ. He did say styles make fights, but I would beg to differ a little bit because there's a big contrast between the fighter that Errol Spence fought and the fighter that Terence Crawford fought. The version of Porter that Spence fought was a champion fighter, and the version of Shawn Porter that Terence Crawford fought was a shell of the man that Spence fought.
I know you, and I know when you got something brewing. I know it.
He had already basically been retired for about a year or so, somewhere around that timeline, and he was already into his podcast pretty heavy, so I just don't think that the version that Terence Crawford fought of Shawn Porter was as high of a level as the version that Spence fought. So I think it's a bad comparison, and I already hate when people try to compare one fight to another fight because, once again, styles do make fights, and you might have beat that person as well as this guy might have beat that person, but if you knocked him out and I didn't, doesn't mean that I didn't punish them, for 12 rounds. He could have still punished him, or he could have still technically had a better fight than Shawn Porter did, but you might have scored the knockout. It depends really on when you fought him. Styles make fights, and, how deep into the game is this guy still. Like I said, the version Spence fought was a champion. The version Terence Crawford fought was not a champion. I think Terence Crawford deserves his credit for beating Shawn Porter, but I don't think you can compare it to the Errol Spence that beat Shawn Porter. It just doesn't make sense because Shawn Porter was at two way different stages of his career when he fought both guys. When you think about what he said about Errol Spence, though, that Errol Spence just keeps coming. You know, Terence Crawford has a master's in mean, but Errol Spence just keeps coming. You know, what does he mean by that?
My thought process once I get in the ring is basically to break them down, because I feel like a lot of these boxers don't train like me, and they're not willing to give it their all. I know the body can only take so much before it break down. So if I feel like if I keep chopping you, it's like a drip of water hitting a brick. After a while, that water gonna start chipping at that brick and get through. So I just keep coming at them, keep coming on, keep touching them, putting my hands on, keep touching you, and it don't even be, like a lot of times it don't be hard loading up shots. It just be, I'm touching you, and I'm just hitting you, and it's basically making your mind overthink, because your mind working too. Not only is your reaction time, everything working, but your mind is going to overload. So everything going to overload.
Errol Spence is like a machine, man. He pumps out those punches for 12 rounds and keeps guys on their toes. You know, he keeps throwing that jab out there. He keeps throwing punches for 12 rounds straight. He referenced the Yordenis Ugas fight, saying that Ugas had some really great moments in that fight, but he was never able to slow Errol Spence down. And you got to think about it. Ugas is a big welterweight. He's a big welterweight just like Errol Spence is, but he was never able to slow Errol Spence down. He was never able to stop the machine. And, you know, if you think about it, he stopped Terence Crawford. I don't know if he stopped him. I know he beat Terence Crawford in the amateurs. And I don't know if the reason he beat Terence Crawford, because I would love to see that footage, was that he was able to tire Terence Crawford out using his size, or was he able to break Terence Crawford down? You know, I would love to see the footage so I would know exactly how he won that fight. But I think, you know, if you're going to compare a fight, why not both of those guys fighting Ugas? You know, I think that is the real tale, because Shawn Porter is a bigger welterweight, bulky, and, you know, he's a little tall, but he's not like Ugas or Errol Spence size. You know, those are pinnacle of welterweights, big welterweights. So I think if you were to compare anybody to, you know, Errol Spence or anybody to Terence Crawford as far as who they fought, I think Ugas is the ultimate fight, because Ugas, you know, he did give Errol Spence a challenge, and Ugas actually beat Terence Crawford in the amateurs.
Oh, there they go. There they go. Every time I start talking about boxing, let me tell you something wonderful. The man was 76 years old, 137 years old.
Now, I know a lot of people say, well, it was the amateurs. It was a fight. He won the fight. So it doesn't matter when they fought. It was a fight, and he won the fight. And I think that that's the better comparison, not to say that because Spence beat him, but to say that because Ugas is a really tough guy. Both of them fought Ugas in the prime. You know, Terence Crawford got a younger version of Ugas, so he was even more in his prime because you got that power of youth. And Errol Spence fought Ugas in his prime because Ugas was a champion, and Ugas had just beaten Manny Pacquiao, you know, and gave him a great showing versus Manny Pacquiao.
Go to sleep, man. I hope it's the long one.
For anybody hating on Manny Pacquiao, I'm going to throw this in there just to say it. Errol Spence, you know, had a really good showing versus Ugas, but Ugas had some really good moments versus Spence. Ugas never knocked Manny Pacquiao down. He never really had Pacquiao hurt. He just beat him on points. And, you know, that looping punch caught him off guard because apparently his legs weren't working correctly that night and he couldn't get out of the way of it. So anybody saying that Pacquiao's washed up, listen, Manny Pacquiao had a great showing versus Ugas just based off of Errol Spence's fight with Ugas. So, you know, I'm going to leave that there. But when it comes to those two guys and what Mike Tyson had to say, I feel like, yes, Terence Crawford does have a master's degree in being mean, but what happens when the school bully meets the big guy? Or what happens when the school bully meets somebody that he can't just out-mean? somebody who's just as tough and has just as much skill sets as them. Usually they get beat up and they stop bullying people. So for Terence Crawford, I hate to be called the bully in this situation because normally bullies get exposed.
You must be out of your goddamn mind.
Y'all let me know what y'all think about all that down in the comment section below. That like button for me. Share. Subscribe. Holler at me on all social media platforms. That Facebook, that Instagram, that YouTube, that Twitter. But you're more than likely to get a response on the tubes, so holler at me over there. You want to collabo, feature a product or your channel on my channel, to hit my Gmail because it is a flock of cards at gmail.com. And we are
sick with the freestyle, call him the green mile, getting money for blocks. What y'all think about me now? Gotta keep my head in the clouds. Daddy like gotta make me proud. Y'all on it, pay me later. Gotta get that money now. Y'all on it funny style, running round, talking shit, tossing chicks. End up with that faucet drip, off to get smooth like a player. I move like I'm greater. I bust your mouth, leave you like you chewed a tomato. Now show a little something. Drop a little bread. Our courage is green. Y'all copper instead. I'm knocking your head right off of your neck. Holla at that drove man, trying to see if he's on deck. Now show some respect and throw up your set. If somebody's sicker, I don't know him yet. You know it's the S. They showing their chest. We blowing the best. It's Louis Keys, nigga. My niggas. What? 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 The ladies. 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 My niggas. What? 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 The ladies. 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 The ladies.